Welcome back to Spotlight. I want to welcome Dr. Cindy George. Good to see you.
Good to
It's
be
been a little
here.
while.
It's been a long time.
Yes.
Yes.
So don't Lord have mercy. Don't make me feel
Don't
so
make
bad.
it sound so bad.
Don't make me feel so bad.
Thank you for having me.
Yes,
It's
but you know,
good.
it's always a pleasure to have you.
It's
really.
always a pleasure to be here, yeah.
There's always so much to talk about, and you know, you're doing such great work.
Thank you.
And you know, I think it's important the things that you have to say, and the information and the help that you give to persons, not just young people, but to persons generally, whether it's in relationships or on the personal challenges.
Right. My private practice. Yes.
Yeah. So it's always good to have you because you always have really important things to say. And of course, you're building this foundation, the Samoish Foundation.
I like how you said that, building, because it's actually that. It's we're building it. Where it's
Yes.
it's a work in progress. Yes. Thank you for saying that.
I mean, you know,
Yeah.
a foundation, you build a foundation.
Yeah.
And of course, it grows and it grows till, you know, it expands and become institution in the community.
There you go.
That's yeah. So I recognize the work
Yeah.
in the foundation, and so of course part of a foundation of this nature always has a vision, a mission, and a goal.
Yes.
You
Yeah.
know, so you know, and I know you have a vision, and you've always had a vision
Always
for a
had a
very,
vision.
very long time. And I think it's important for us to know what that vision is, and how as a community
Sure.
we fit into your vision, and
Yeah.
how you are planning to achieve the mission that you're using to achieve those goals.
Yeah, yeah. Well, definitely. We're only 1 year old. We just got incorporated last July, and we are building. And the purpose really of the foundation is, and I like to say, we want to be a beacon of hope. You know, for people that feel as if there's might not be a tomorrow, or for somebody that feels life is coming to an end, or I need help. We want to be that beacon of hope for people to realize that there are new beginnings. And we want to empower people and enhance their lives psychologically and socially. So that's our main purpose. The mission of the Samoish Foundation is really to be a resource. And I like when you said that I definitely always try to be a resource, not just to youths, to older adults. And those are the two target populations that we're working with. And to be a resource to disseminate information. And if you'll permit me to just say, in terms of doing that, we do that in a lot of different ways now. For example, here on the show, maybe if I do presentations in our community, and also I have a talk show, the Dr. Cindy Show, whereby I talk about a lot of topics that sometimes are taboo in our community. And we've talked a lot about youths and sex. We've talked about, how can parents begin to talk to their teenagers about those things, and just really talk about depression. What are youths going through in terms of sense of who they are? We've had guests on for that. We've talked about education and the importance of higher education. So disseminating and bringing information to the community is what the foundation is about. And the talk show, the Dr. Cindy Show, is in affiliation with the foundation. And we also, in addition to disseminating information, we want to provide services via programs and projects. And that goes into programs that will allow for the youths to learn how to communicate, learn how to communicate with parents, their peers, learn how to just be better individuals, empower themselves. And I use that word a lot, empowerment, because it's one of the key words that we have at Samoish Foundation, because we think it's key to getting anybody to be successful. And so that's our mission, is really to give information and to provide services. And the vision, very, very key, excellence. And I want to hit that word. We want to foster excellence in you, in the next person, in everyone, to realize that they have the potential to reach their fullest. And that is our vision, for you to reach whatever your fullest potential is. And so those are the key things that we're going to be moving toward, whether it be events, programs, projects, information like I'm doing now. You know, and
Let's give the. I didn't know that you had a radio program.
well, I have a radio. I have two. I have a radio program and I have a talk show.
In your
TV talk show.
television?
Television show.
Okay, well let's give
You wanna talk about
let's
it?
give him a plug.
Okay,
let's give
thank
him
you.
a plug.
Sure.
I mean, you know,
Yes, it's called the Dr. Cindy Show, and it comes. Let me look at the camera. It comes on channel 51 on Wednesdays at 7.
Okay.
And it's also repeated on, I think, Fridays at 9, Mondays at 7, and I think Tuesdays at 1:30 p.m.
Okay.
Yeah. And so the Dr. Cindy Show really is to talk about a lot of those things that we don't want to talk about. We want to talk about, but we're afraid to talk about
them. Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
And so you know, I've had some wonderful guests on. My last guest was Dr. Volker, a sexologist from Miami, and she really talked about intimate relationships and working with that. And this week we have a repeat show with Noeline Levens-Clark, which is going to be speaking to teenagers, youths rather, and sex. And it's a half-hour program, so you can tune in tomorrow.
And what about radio?
Yes, I have a Living Well with Samarj, and that's on ZBVI. I'm on hiatus right now with that, but usually I come back. I take hiatus later in the year, and I come back earlier in the year. And but basically, with that Living Well with Samarj, we talk about wellness for everyone, and it covers parenting, it covers relationships, it covers self-esteem, you know, and from an individual perspective, couples perspective, and family perspective. And those are the three areas in our community.
Yes, yeah,
and you got to hit them. Yeah.
You find that life now is presenting more challenges than it has ever presented before?
I think so. You know, but I don't know if that's such a bad thing, because I think the impetus of that is because people are trying to figure out who they are. I think.
Well, I agree with you,
You know.
and I really want to go there.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I don't know if we should call it problems. I think we should more call it struggles and challenges, you know?
For self-realization.
For self-realization. There you go. Self-actualization.
Actualization.
Yeah. And you know, as we were talking about youths, and you know, you were saying to Ms. Hoyt earlier in terms of talking, you know, that I would be speaking to, well, you know, what are happening with you, what are some of the things that I'm seeing happening with youths. And I think sometimes we complicate life too much. And I'm going to break it down for you. I think from my observations working with youths, what I've seen, youths want three simple things: understanding, self-expression, and acceptance. Those are the three things that they want.
Understanding, self-expression, acceptance.
Yeah, and I think a lot of the times when they have conflicts in those areas, we see it manifested in outward behaviors. We see it manifested in their relationships because they're not able to communicate that. They're not able to build proper linkages with the important persons in their lives to be able to have those three things. And I think those are the three things that really empowers youths. And if you look a lot about it, and we talk a lot about youths and how they're different, and oh, the youths today so different than the youths before and whatever, but I think the youths today are just simply wanting to find out who they are and wanting to be able to express that.
Well, are we educating them then in those things, in the ways of introspection, in the ways of paying attention to thought, in the ways of looking into the environment and understanding what's going on? Are we educating them in those areas? We constantly talk about education from the perspective of, to make it simple, reading, writing, and arithmetic, and getting trained and getting going into business, getting a job, and forward movement in terms of material success. but are we educating them from the perspective of spiritual success?
And that's a very good question. And you know, I want to use the word gap. That's where Samaj Foundation comes in to fulfill the gap. You know, and yes, there are a lot of organizations and out there, and I think we all serve a purpose. We all serve many different purposes, but I think, to answer your question, not so much. And this is where Samaj Foundation will then fill the gap. And I'll just give you an example. We had a poem competition last school year. It was called the Samaj Foundation Empowerment Poem Competition. And that purpose of a competition was to get high school students to be able to write a poem that expressed self-love, self-identity, and self-acceptance. Okay, and then they had to then look into themselves. Who am I? How can I write this? And we got some beautiful poems, and I just want to take a moment, if I can, to acknowledge our winners. The first place winner went to a student from Cedar International School by the name of Kendall Davis. He wrote a very good poem called The Power of Life. And our second place went to Seventh-day Adventist Secondary School, and our third place went to the Elmore Stout High School. And I just want to thank our sponsor. CCT provided the first place, which was one of those Wi-Fi mobile devices. They got a free, I think, 3-month service or something like that. And then we had a gift certificate from Island Services, and the third place was from Play to Win. I just wanted to thank those sponsors for contributing to that, and to the schools also for participating. But, going back to what we were talking about in terms of, are we getting them that introspection? And that's really what we want to do in Samaj Foundation. Give them that introspection. A lot of times we give them all this information. Okay, this is how you can learn how to do this. This is how you can be better. But how can we help them now to apply those things and actually do it for themselves? And that's why I really wanted the poem. And then it may have seemed simple, but I think once you're able to look inside yourself to write something so beautiful as a poem, and as we heard Ms. Hoyt said, her song started out as a poem,
yes.
but then it turned into a song.
Yes.
That's so beautiful song. It's so inspirational.
Yes.
So you have to look into yourself, and I think that is so empowering for a teenager to do something like that.
But there's some techniques though. There's some things that you need to know in order to have that introspection. There's some prerequisite, if I may, a foundation or some preliminaries that you have to know to even have the thought of looking at your thoughts and then seeing how these thoughts are manifesting into your actions and how they may be hindering your growth or helping your growth. I mean, those are things I don't think that we think of as abilities to learn. I mean, what's your view on?
Oh my goodness! As you said that, I'm thinking about another project that we have coming up next year, and you're so absolutely right. I do think that in order for the youths or anyone to have that introspection, there has to be some kind of life experience. There has to be some kind of understanding to, okay, I'm here and I want to get somewhere else. I want to learn more about X, Y, or Z. I want to learn more about how can I have a better relationship with my dad, with my mom. I want to learn how to be a better student. I want to learn how to be able to be successful when I go to college and work as a business person or whatever profession I choose to go into. And I think once you have those thoughts and you have those thinking of an aspiration, it kind of moves you into a direction of, okay, well, how do I get there then? How do I start thinking now? Do I have the ability to do that? Do I have the self-confidence in myself to do that? You know what I mean? And so it's really all about that. And I it's not like you're almost in my head, and I'm so glad I can also bring this up. We've partnered with the Ministry of Health, my good friend and colleague Noeline Levens Clark, wonderful professional. And next year we're going to be introducing what we call Girl Power, and it's a project that's gonna enhance young women. It's about psychological empowerment and physical empowerment too. And so they're going to learn about the female, how to take care of your, female stuff, and also psychological. How do I deal with boyfriends? What do I say if I'm feeling threatened, or if I'm feeling he doesn't respect me, or if I'm feeling pressure to have sex? All of those things, How do I keep my sense of who I am and not be in a relationship that I don't want to be in, and maybe it goes into violence, or things like that. So that's a project that we're going to be bringing on stream next school year. We're very excited about it because that goes back to what we just said. How do I get that introspection? Learning. How do they learn about these things? And that project is going to do absolutely that.
Yeah. Well, I have a big concern about that.
Okay.
The fact that you're having this project to empower girls and to help them to look into these various areas of their lives and relationships and sexuality and so on, and self-esteem and confidence. But we're not doing that for boys. And I have to say, I don't think it's a good idea that we have all of these things for the empowerment of our girls, and we don't have the same things for the empowerment of our boys. And so I don't see where there needs to be this separation, because the same introspection, the same thought processes and relationship management and confidence building and self-esteem building are necessary and vital for the growth of boys as well. And my concern is that we are creating a society, a social structure, where girls are developing faster in the data. When you look at a high school graduation, when you look at college graduation, when you look at college entry, education, professionalism, jobs and businesses and so on, you begin to see girls and women advancing at a rapid rate. And it appears to me, and I might be wrong, and I know that there's some young men who are doing some great things, but it seems to me that and when you look at those types of data, that young men are falling behind. And then when we start saying, when a young woman starts saying that you have to be of a certain ilk to have a relationship with me, and you have to be of a certain standard and have a certain knowledge of things, and a certain drive and a certain confidence and a certain ability to provide and be a full partner.
So you think
where are those men going to come from?
So you think that's what happened? That's what will happen?
I think that's what's happening.
That's what is happening.
That is
okay.
happening. Yeah, and I'm concerned about that.
And I do appreciate your candidness, and I do agree with you. However, I think that, and this may be the politically correct response, but while I do agree with you that we shouldn't necessarily separate them, and I think for, how should I put this politically correctly? For the purposes of pilot studies, for the purposes of assessing certain things and seeing how things move, I do think we are moving with the girl power first. Assess, see how that works, incorporate. But you've definitely given something to think about. I'm always open, and perhaps once we've established that does work, we could do a combination. But this particular study is something that we've adopted, that was already a study out there that was done in St. Martin. It was done in the U.S. and some other Caribbean islands, and so we are adopting it here. But definitely I'm not at all not open to combining the two. And it's interesting that you say that, because when I, just, not to digress, but when I was a guidance officer, and even when I was away to school and I worked in the school system in the U.S., working with youths in the school system, I had that same mentality. and we didn't separate the boys and girls. They came together. So I am of that mind, and I do agree. I do agree.
I think it's something that
Yeah.
where we need to start immediately,
Yeah.
and we have already created that situation where if it continues to develop, will, in my view, prevent some social challenges that would be more difficult to rectify down the road.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we're going to take a break for a word from our sponsors.
Okay.
And I want to continue on that spiritual discussion. And one of the things that Ms. Hoyt, Gabrielle, brought to my mind when she was talking about her music and being able to rely on God for assistance in solving problems. How does that play in to the building, the empowerment process of boys and girls, and how do we get them to that point to rely on that divine power? When you talk about empowerment, to be able to say, to be able to have the confidence to say, leave it to God.
There's something else greater than I.
There's something greater than that, and to have the confidence, and to have the confidence based in knowledge. Because I also have a challenge with knowledge versus belief, which we're going to talk about when we come back. I don't want to give away too much. Keep it locked right in the spotlight. We'll be right back after these words from our sponsors.
Spotlight is brought to you by the National Bank of the Virgin Islands and CCT Global Communications.
Welcome back to Spotlight. I'm having very fascinating conversation with Dr. Cindy George of the Submerge Foundation. And we talked a little bit about the foundation, and we're talking about some of the things that our young people, some of the challenges our young people are going through, how to help them to deal with it, things that perhaps they may need to learn in order to cope with some of the stressors in the society. The society is perhaps producing more stressors in these modern times, and we need to perhaps pay more attention to the information that we're giving our young people that would help them to cope with some of these increased stressors. But we left off talking about the whole notion or the view of being able to recognize the higher power within you and without you, around you, and people call like power different names, but we talk about God. And how do we have that faith, that level of faith, the knowledge-based faith, the evidence? How do we get that evidence of the unseen? We heard, I mentioned, we heard Gabrielle talk about, some of the challenges that she was going through. I know I went through some challenges when I had this big project and not being able to predict the future and not being secure in the knowledge that everything was going to be okay just on my own. No money running out, can't get this, can't get that. Things are not moving fast enough, all the fears and concerns that you have around a project or major project that you're doing. And how do you say, leave it to God? How do you say, man, God gonna take care of this thing, I ain't gotta worry about it, boom, I gone on. And watch it manifest in your best interest. How can we get, as a people, to that point, and to get our young people at an early age to that point, to be able to manage challenges in that way, to have that level of knowledge, not just belief, where, because I have this saying that inherent in the nature of belief is ignorance and doubt. So when you believe, you don't really know, and if you don't really know, you doubt.
Yes.
And when you doubt, then that faith, that faith, the
faith
grain,
gets
that
wet.
faith, the grain of a mustard seed don't materialize.
Yeah.
I don't know if you see where I'm coming from with that. How do we get that faith, the grain of a mustard seed, so we can move those mountains that Jesus talked about when he was on earth?
Yeah, and you know, you're asking some really powerful questions, and I'm wondering if it's all really subjective, as I'm listening to your questions. But I think, you know, if we have to break it down, going back, and I don't know if she's watching because we've been referencing her so much, Ms. Hoyt that was here earlier. But going back to what she was saying in terms of her experiences, and I think that it first begins with the understanding of yourself. You know, okay, if I'm understanding who I am, knowing what I want, what I'm capable of, I think that then gets us to begin to say, okay, well, you know what, if I try X, Y, or Z, this can help. Let me keep pushing further and further. Just like with you when you were building your home, I'm sure you were saying, well, okay, if I do this, I know I could do this, and because I have the ability to do so, that might help. I could talk to this person and convince them to help me do so and so.
Yeah.
So first you have to understand who you are, to know your capabilities and your strengths. And then I think that will then push you now into an experience. But then when you get into that experience, and now things get harder, the water get a little more rough and things start tumbling and get a little deeper.
Yeah.
You know, and then at that point now you begin to experience, and you say, okay, now what do I then now pull on?
Yeah.
And
Where was the strength
where's the
gonna come
strength
from?
can come from?
Yeah.
You know, and I think it goes back up. It's a mental choice.
Yeah.
I think it's a mental choice.
But
know?
yes, it's of course a
And-
mental choice. But how do we get to be able to? Because you have to rely. I mean, you have to abandon yourself
You abandon yourself.
and say, God, you know, I need you to take me through this deep water right here.
And I think
How do we do that? How do we get our young people to, especially our young people?
Yeah, and I think it goes back to what we were saying earlier in terms of the people around us, you know, recognizing things that have happened with our other family members, how they got through, moving from the experiences of others to help us get to our own experiences. And then again, we said for young people, we have to be models for our young people, because we can't tell our young people to have faith if they don't see us
We
exercise
ourselves
the
don't
faith.
have no faith, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So if we don't have the faith and exercise it,
Yes.
how can they then have faith if they don't have that model of what exercising that faith looks like? You know?
Is our religion adequate?
So,
In
what sense?
In that sense, in the sense of giving us that faith, is because we go to church a lot.
but then I got to stop you right there, because we cannot fully, because when you say religion, to me that means Methodist, Church of God, and so forth. But then you said it is our religion adequate, but then our faith is what then gets us through.
Well, okay.
You see what I mean?
But I'm coming from the perspective.
Okay.
I'm coming from the perspective that religion is supposed to be that method that helps us to increase our faith.
Yeah. Well, I can't say
That we don't start off having faith.
yeah.
That we go through this process. We go through a religious process, and whatever religion, you know, you could say who you think is the best religion. Was it the right religion? You could argue back and forth all day about what's the right religion. But there is a process in all religions that leads you towards
Faith. That's
that faith.
true. That's true.
And I often wonder, given some of what I see in my environment and some of our behavior as people, is our religion having the success that it ought to have in building our faith in God and creating in our young people and in ourselves as adults that confidence, that love, that self-esteem, our ability to manage our challenges, our ability to rely on that faith and on that God to manage our challenges and to distress us. Because I also believe that to the extent that we have faith is to that same extent that we don't stress.
right.
And so I would think as a counselor, as someone who is intimately involved on the front lines of trying to help us to manage our lives, to have a positive, empowered outcome. That would be one of the things that we'd be looking at.
Well, now I'll have to break it down there. I don't practice religious counseling.
and I'm, right, okay.
Right. I don't practice religious counseling. I practice secular counseling. So, but what I will say is that when my clients come in, and going back to wellness, my client might come in for depression, or they might come in for anxiety or stress or a relationship challenge. I always weave in and incorporate what I call the wellness component. And the mind piece, yes, we're working on helping them to be able to be psychologically fit to get over whatever it is the concern is. And we look at the physical piece. I ask them, okay, how are you sleeping? How are you eating? Let's work on the physical. Let's get some exercise, start walking, whatever. And then the spiritual piece. And I always am very clear with them. I'm saying it's not necessarily about where you go to have that connection with other persons, that is your religion or your church or whatever. But when I speak to spirituality, the spiritual piece of it, I'm speaking to what we said earlier, having a connection and believe that there's a higher person to us. Power. And so to answer your question, how do I as a counselor help persons meet that? I challenge them. I challenge them to recognize that there is another inner person within them. There is, and it's up to them to begin to believe. I can't make them believe it. That's a choice that they're going to make to do that, and step out on faith and say, well, you know what? I'm coming here to Dr. George. She's helping me. I'm working too, but there's something bigger than her, and there's something bigger than me, and I'm going to also bring into this picture and into this equation. Okay, and that's what I challenge my clients.
But can't you recognize it though? I mean, you might not, you won't be able to make me believe it.
Right.
But at some point, shouldn't I be able to recognize it for myself?
I think clients do recognize. Oh yeah.
If it's there, and we both believe that it's a reality.
Yes.
And it's truth. Then at some point, I have to be able to recognize it for myself.
Yeah, and I think clients do recognize it. They do recognize it. Yeah, they can and they do. Yes, recognize it.
Adults now, we talk about children, young people, and I think perhaps what I'm getting from the conversation is that perhaps we need to, on an educational level, that some of these things, and you being on the front line, needs to be, and I'm glad to hear you say that you're working with the Ministry of Health and Social Development, but I think you also need to be working with the Ministry of Education as well, because some of these things need to start. I think if they started from an earlier age, we usually start looking to this higher power later on in life, or when we are at the bottom of.
And we need to.
Yeah, when we have exhausted ourselves to where we have no place else to turn, no place else to go but up. Do we have to? In my mind, do we have to go there? Can't we learn from an earlier age that this is the thing that we need to follow. This is the things that we need to know about ourselves, so that we can never have to go to the bottom of the pit,
right?
And be forced to reckon with ourselves and to come to terms with God.
Yeah, and I think it goes back to what we were saying earlier. For those younger persons, it goes back to the parental contribution, being the model and showing them that. And then when they then grasp that as they get older, they then will begin to also make their own choices and own decisions as well. But for the young ones, definitely it will have to come from the adults in their lives.
And of course, the adults in their lives are having problems because we run out of time. and we didn't get to talk about
The older adults.
that you know, adults that have gone through life and found out that perhaps they haven't lived the life that they wanted to live or thought they should have lived, and now they're finding themselves in a position where perhaps they're not quite sure where they're going to go from here. You know, retirement is coming.
How do I get through that?
How do I get how do I get through retirement? How do I maintain my quality of life? Am I properly prepared? We start asking ourselves these mortal questions.
Yes.
You know what I mean? And how's the foundation trying to help in that regard?
Well,
and as short as you can.
Yes. Well, right now we're wanting to do a wellness project, a wellness for older adults. And what we're going to do is we're going to begin to provide the information and provide the application, the services combined together to help them to be able to mind, body, spirit. And we're hoping that it will help them to sustain over time and be better able to get through whatever it is that they're doing. But it's education and then application in terms of that via mind, body, and spirit.
Okay.
Yeah.
We're gonna have to come back again.
Yeah.
Because I also believe that there's some ritual practices that we need to go through and process, a process that we need to go through ritual practice that help to solidify and to sort of to bring deeper into our consciousness these behaviors that and these attitudes and these views and feelings that we need to be able to manifest outward in order to have successful and stress-free lives.
That's interesting. That's interesting. I know I don't even have time to respond, but it's something to think about.
Yeah. So but persons wanting to have an experience with you, with the foundation and with your practice, in terms of helping to cope with the stressors, helping to build their self-esteem, helping to motivate them into action, all of those things, to manage the challenges of the society and to help them with what they're going through. How can they get in touch with you, and how can you help those people through your practice and through your foundation?
Well, through the practice, of course, Samaj counseling and consultation. I do counseling for individuals, couples, and families, and a myriad of concerns. And they could always reach me at 346-0662. They can email me at sumarj@sumarjfoundation.com. And for the foundation, it's Samaj Foundation at gmail.com. And, I'm always available. You can check my website, www.sumajcounseling.com.
So if you Google Samorge Counseling, that's CIMORGE, foundation, it should come up.
Oh, we don't have a website as yet.
You don't have a website?
We don't have it. We're working on
I'm looking
the
for, because
website.
you repeat telephone numbers and websites and email addresses, and it's hard to remember.
Yeah.
And so is there a place? Are you in the phone book and anywhere we could go on and
Well,
find
yeah,
you?
you to find me, you can go on my website, www.sumarjcounseling.com. You go on there, you'll find all my contact information, all the emails, my numbers, everything is on there. And as I said, we're still working on our website, but if you want to email, you can email sumarjfoundation@gmail.com. If you have any questions.
But Simorge is the name to remember.
Simorge is the name to remember.
And that's CIMORGE.
The big C.
Yeah. Simorge is the name to remember. Dr. George, I'm going to have you back more often.
No, we have to do it. I have to be for the whole show.
Yeah, we're gonna commit to a regular meeting.
You keep saying that, we gotta work it out.
Yeah, on radio and on television.
And on television.
Because there's a lot of things that we need to talk about, and I'm seeing it more and more as I'm interacting in the community and seeing some of the things that our people are going through. that we need the information to come out, and the information need to come out in the institutions as well, in the schools, and college, and where young people are, and so on. We just can't wait until this is preventative measure.
This is preventative.
This is preventative
exactly.
measure. Yes, it's good to see you.
Good to see you too. Thanks for having me.
It's been my pleasure is mine.
Thanks for having me.
Yes, Spotlight is seen live here on Tuesdays at 8 p.m. on JTV Channel 55. It's also rebroadcast on Sundays at 2:30 in the afternoon. You can see Spotlight on demand at jtvlive.net. You can like our Facebook page, facebook.com/Spotlight BVI. And you can participate in the discussions. You can suggest topics, or you can suggest persons that you want to see interviewed. Next week, the spotlight is going to shine on training for foster and adoptive parents. That's going to be interesting. Also, the Taurus Board's November of Our Contentment. Yes, with the food fest, the barefoot gourmet soiree, the taste of the Virgin Gorda, the Anegada Lobster Fest.
Oh, that sounds good.
It's going to be a lot to talk about, so be sure to tune in. I'm Edrenka reminding you that when the spotlight is on, you see the facts. Peace and blessings.
Spotlight is brought to you by Tortola Concrete Limited, the National Bank of the Virgin Islands, and CCT Global Communications.